structured, unstructured, and casual. Three major types of group situations. A structured situation is where basically everybody is given a certain allotment of time, and they're basically guaranteed. So, suppose it's like a board meeting or something. Everyone, or maybe not a board meeting, any kind of serious meeting, let's say, everyone is guaranteed 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. The good thing about a structured group situation like that is that you can easily, it's basically the easiest to deal with. Because you can prepare, you can rehearse, you can take notes, you can get ready for that day. And you know exactly how much time you're going to have, and you know who's going to talk and who's going to be talking about what, generally speaking. The unstructured situation is where the power dynamics really reveal themselves in a tangible way. And unstructured basically means, you know, the default kind of group dynamic. It's where leaders and followers are interacting, they're talking business, they're sharing ideas, they're doing meetings, group activities, workshops, whatever the case may be, right? So it's a default professional situation. And then a casual situation, obviously, it could be at a bar, could be just over coffee or something. People are just hanging out, and there's no structure at all, certainly, and so that reveals a lot of kind of subconscious power dynamics as well. But the difference with a casual situation compared to an unstructured is that the casual is not about work. We're not really specifically talking about work. That's not the purpose. We're not trying to achieve anything. Right? We're not trying to complete a project or anything like that. We're just kind of hanging out, chatting with each other. And booze, alcohol might be present, you know, people's tongues are a little bit looser. In these kinds of casual situations, from a networking standpoint, from a career standpoint, it's very beneficial to participate in those. A lot of people don't do that, which is to their detriment. You know, it's really important to actually participate in those opportunities, especially if there's high status or high level people that might be in those situations, to build those informal relationships. But it's also really beneficial because you can learn a lot about the real dynamics, what's going on behind the scenes, if you put yourself in those situations. So those are the main elements. Typically, when we think about a group, if we're thinking in our minds, coming from the outside, we think of like this homogeneous block of people. And what we have to remember is that a group is not really a group, per se, the way we perceive it. A group is simply a collection of individuals, right? And those individuals are leaders and followers, fundamentally, okay? What this does, it helps to take a ton of pressure off. Because if it's just me against this huge monstrosity, that's a lot of pressure that I'm putting on myself mentally, right? I can force myself to do it, but I'm probably going to underperform in the context of that group dynamic, right? But if I recognize that these are each individuals, and you know, each person has a different dynamic, you know, some are red, some are black, right? No racial references, but you know, just because these are the colors I have. You know what I mean? I can start to see them each as individuals, and then I start to see the openings potentially for how I can contribute or how I can engage with this particular group. What are the seams, so to speak, right? That I can kind of enter in, start building relationships and building alliances, so to speak. So it goes back to observation. I approach a group, and I'm observing who are the leaders, what are the dynamics, right? What are the norms? What are the assumptions, the beliefs, the frame, you know, kind of the norm, or the received wisdom of that group, right? When I go into a group, start chatting, I can ask a lot of open-ended questions, right? So, you know, what are your guys' opinion right now about how the market is going in the next 6 months? You know, I don't know what it's going to be. They could hit me with anything. They could say it's going to go up, it's going to go down, whatever it might be. But that gives me a lot of great information. Again, I'm taking a ton of pressure off of myself because I'm not pressuring myself to perform in a certain way in front of this group. I'm just basically collecting information, right? It's like a research phase almost. What's the energy level? Again, the pace of the conversation, the aesthetics or the appearance, right? Is everybody in suits and ties, everybody in t-shirts and flip-flops? That's going to affect as well how I should certainly how I should dress and present myself visually, but if I'm already dressed and I'm approaching a group situation, maybe you can loosen your tie or something like that. Or if you're approaching a group of suits and ties and you're like messy hair and flip-flops and a t-shirt, I don't know, straighten up your hair or something, and, try to look decent. Volume also. Again, you gotta understand what's the kind of the default volume of this group. Is everybody really loud? Is it quiet? It also depends on the context that we're in. Loud bar, nightclub, is it a quiet coffee shop? Whatever the case may be. And then is it a dynamic or rigid group? So, dynamic groups versus rigid groups. What's the difference? A dynamic group, an example, as I said before, it's fluid, it's flexible. We see this on the first day of school, for example. So, for example, when I went to college, first couple days, it was the freshman orientation, all the hot girls were happy to talk to me. Okay? Why is that? Because nobody knows anything about anybody, right? It's a big college. Everybody's coming from around the country. Everyone is open-minded. Everybody's flexible. Everybody's kind of getting their bearings, right? It's a very dynamic situation. Probably one of the most dynamic situations, actually. And so everybody's kind of feeling each other out, seeing who are the power players, who are the cool people, who are the weird people, you know what I mean? So everybody is pretty much open to talking to anybody in that situation.
Start talking about the beginning or?
At the very beginning. After about a week, none of those girls gave me the time of day. Okay?
Don't feel bad, it's less than 10 minutes for me.
Exactly. So, now bear in mind, I also knew nothing about how to talk to girls or how to talk to people in general even, right? This is years ago. But why is that? Because the dynamic group became rigid. Patterns were established, right? So we all kind of know who are the leaders, who are the followers, who are the cool, interesting people, who's the dead weight, and so on, right? So, over time, all dynamic groups will become rigid groups, simply because human beings naturally fall into certain patterns with each other. Or the alternative is the dynamic group is so dynamic that it just melts apart. Basically, people are just so different from each other, so disparate that they just kind of fall away from each other. There's three major types of people that you're going to encounter in group: leaders, outsiders, and subordinates, right? So we have a couple minutes, I can explore this a little bit more. Within these three categories, obviously there's a wide variety of characters and archetypes and all kinds of individuals. But fundamentally, there's leaders and then subordinates. That's what it comes down to, okay? So when you enter a group, again, there's individuals. It's not one monolithic block. It's a series of individuals. So you got to be thinking to yourself, who are the leaders here? Who are the power players? Who are the people that everybody's kind of influenced by and that everybody is really paying attention to and taking their cues from? And then there's outsiders. Now, if you're interested in being a power player, if you're interested in really influencing the group, and you're not a leader already, then you want to be an outsider, ideally, because the good thing about an outsider is that your place has not been established yet within the context of the group. Once you're a subordinate, it's pretty much fixed at that point. You can always change. It's not impossible, but it's rare. And by the same token, once you've established yourself as a leader within an organization or group, people will almost always continue to treat you in that way, even if your title changes or various circumstances change. So, if you had to choose between outsider and subordinate, you'd go with being an outsider. And on that point, if you want to increase your influence in a professional or in a personal capacity, then basically you have two major options. Option number one is to be an outsider, and an outsider with respect to various groups, so kind of entering groups or organizations from the outside and establishing yourself as a leader within those groups. Or the other option is to utilize your existing group, if at all possible, and rise through the ranks. And if there's any mechanisms or potential tools that you can use, it could be just a simple promotion, it could be seniority issues or whatever, to eventually become the leader in that context. But if you're basically stuck in a subordinate position within a given group, then that would be your go-to option, is to actually essentially forge a new group for yourself, from scratch.